This is episode 216 of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. This episode is brought to you by Control and Compound Financial. They teach real estate investors how to multiply their wealth using infinite banking strategies. For a complimentary wealth coaching session or to learn more, visit www.controlandcompound.com/Andrew Hines. Today I have Thomas Lorini on the show, and Thomas is one interesting guy, both a real estate investor and developer in Canada and the US. So Thomas was raised in Toronto, Ontario, and then he married an American and moved to California. Now he invests on both sides of the border. He's doing multifamilies in Cleveland. He's doing developments in Arizona and everything in between. And we really dug into both of those topics. So Cleveland's an interesting town. It's, within driving distance from where I'm located here in Burlington, Ontario. And I've invested in Ohio before. It's a very working class state. I think there's a lot that state has to offer, and I would certainly consider it again under the right context. So Thomas and I dug into an 8-plex deal that he's recently acquired there, what the numbers look like, and what he's likely to get as a valuation when he's done. We also talked about this multi-phase Arizona development deal, which is going to be several hundred residential units with potential for further expansion. And this is a topic I'm getting into more and more on this show. People who watched the early episodes know that we talked about, BRRRRing duplexes and single family renos and things like that at a very small scale. Well, the natural progression of this show has been, for me, let's keep it growing. Let's keep it interesting, keep diving into newer, bigger, better topics. And there's nothing wrong with those small deals. But what I really love is that we get to expand what we talk about on this show. And this is a perfect example. We've been talking about development a lot. We're going to keep talking about that because there's massive profits to be made in development. And for those of you who are new to real estate investing and you want those basic nuts and bolts, that's still super important. And it's great for a very solid foundation to build on. I highly recommend going right back to episode 1, work your way through the first 10, 15 episodes, and then you'll have a solid foundation of the fundamentals. And then come on back and join us here. If you feel so inclined, check out every episode all the way through. I know many people who have done that, and it's pretty incredible to see the things that they know and understand about real estate investing. So with that said, if you're enjoying this show, please leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you listen. And if you're a video viewer, please hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell, and leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. It'd be greatly appreciated, and it helps that algorithm get the show out to more people. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump into the episode with Thomas Lorini. Hello and welcome to the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. I've got Thomas Lorini on the show again after much technical difficulty and 2 years since your last podcast episode. So thanks for doing this again.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you, Andrew.
All right. So Thomas, I know we got a few minutes into the last one and then realized we were recording MIDI somehow, and we're back on track now. But for those who haven't seen your previous episode, tell us a little bit about yourself. Obviously, you're U.S. based, which is one of the cool things, but give me the story.
Yeah, so born and raised in Toronto, background mechanical engineering. I worked for a number of manufacturing companies and ended up opening up my own machining company back in 2007. Did that for a number of years. Started buying real estate on the side. Initially, Hamilton was my main focus, and it wasn't any elaborate strategy. It was buy and hold. Mm-hmm. And did that, and my wife's American, so at some point, we made the decision to move to the U.S. And at that point is when I sold the business and we transferred to the U.S. and basically kind of went full-time into real estate at that time.
You got your license down there.
Correct.
Now, were you investing in Canada from California when you moved?
Yes. So, moving to the U.S. back then, this is almost 10 years ago. I knew nobody besides my wife's family. So I had no contacts, I had no credit, I had no nothing. So at that time, I got my license, and because I had a relatively small portfolio here in Canada, but I figured, well, I've been doing it now, maybe I can continue to do long distance. Mm-hmm. And that became successful because a number of people knew I was in real estate. They wanted to start partnering with me. So it worked out great where they would qualify for the mortgages. I would source the deal and put things together. So I did quite a number of JVs from long distance. And then eventually, I started investing in the U.S. as well. And now, yeah.
You're talking about, so you're far away. You're arranging deals back home, using investors from back home,
Yes.
but you're the guy that's far away.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, you figure things out, and I was like, well, I mean, I don't have to physically go to the properties. That's one kind of limiting belief I think a lot of us have. It's like, I need to go and touch the asset, the building. I need to walk through it. But if you got a relatively good team, you have inspections, appraisals, and contractors go through. And maybe if you want to send someone that you can trust it as well, kind of second set of eyes, I mean, that can work, and it allows you to kind of like move quickly.
Yeah, the key thing is like a trusted set of eyes, somebody that is looking out for your interests, and that doesn't come overnight. But fortunately, your roots were here, right?
Yes.
So just because you moved didn't mean you had to start from scratch. I mean, eventually you did sort of start from scratch in your area too, right?
True. And a lot of people I JV'd with, they were kind of my second set of eyes. They would walk through the building and say, okay, yeah, we like it. This is what we saw and so forth. So, and I did that for a number of years. And then eventually, when I was a little more integrated into the US, is when I started purchasing properties on that side of the border. But going down today, I do invest on both sides of the border, but really much more focused in the US.
Yeah. And I've had this conversation with a few people. I mean, I'm always open to a deal in Canada. Don't get me wrong, but in terms of my long-term focus, far more appealing to me to grow a portfolio in the US than Canada. There's just so many reasons. And I was wondering if you can give some of your reasons.
100%. I mean, I talk about the opportunities, the size of the US. You have a population 10 times the size of Canada. You've got the economics, you've got opportunities, you've got affordability of the, the financing. There's so many things to factor in, but really my top reasons would be landlord-friendly states that, coming from Ontario, which you don't really have, is a huge thing. There's several markets across the U.S. who are landlord-friendly. So you as the landlord, as the owner, have much more control of your asset.
Yeah, and it's more than just the landlord-friendly. Well, I mean, we're the opposite of landlord-friendly, obviously, in Ontario. It's almost like a sentiment among people too. There's that socialist mentality where people really don't like landlords.
Yeah.
And the landlord's the enemy, and we won't pay that last month's rent, or it's usually like stiff you with utility bills or whatever. Like, I had my last set of tenants left and did that $800 in water bills just out there. All of a sudden they don't respond to their phone calls anymore.
Yeah.
So that's a mentality. And I think that down in the US, depending on which state, obviously there's going to be areas, but they just, they don't have that necessarily. Not the same way. It's
correct.
still there.
You make a good point. Socialistic, environment, which is Canada versus more of a, capitalistic in the U.S. I mean,
state dependent.
But I mean, even California.
Even New York State and California, I would say, are more capitalist friendly, except for like the cities than Canada in general.
Yes. I mean, I'm living in California. I'm in Orange County. I mean, even within the state, like LA to Orange County, a significant difference on kind of political environment, that sort of thing. But I think just more of a business mentality and business kind of like support, and the system kind of like encouraging people to go in business in the US versus in Canada.
Yeah.
In terms of like, this is an interesting kind of thing to consider. Like California, similar to Ontario, landlord, tenant friendly, it's got rent control, all that good stuff. The prices of properties skyrocket. The cost of rent skyrocket. Other parts of the country, Texas, Florida, the Midwest, Ohio's and so forth, much more like tapered down. The price points, so it goes to show you that rent control, in my opinion, doesn't really work.
It's an inverse effect. Yeah. Like the more rent control you have, the less affordable housing will be.
Right.
It always backfires. And I've had multiple examples of people come on this show and like go through examples of that. So it's just, it's the way government intervention works, unfortunately. So there are some states that are very friendly to landlords. What are some of your favorites?
So I mean, there's a number of states. My top 3 states are Ohio, Arizona, and surprisingly enough, California, because that's my market.
Yeah.
So there's one thing to say, what I would recommend people, but for me personally, it works well, especially if you're doing new construction, where we can set the rent. And
so there's no rent control in the new
rent control for new construction. No.
Similar in Ontario too.
Right. So, and then Ohio, just for the price points, the solid boots in the ground team I have, the opportunity. For instance, Cleveland is number 2 over the past 12 months for the most rent increase in the country after North Carolina, Charlotte. So there's a lot of good stuff in and around Ohio.
And Cleveland's super affordable.
Very affordable.
Are you that bold to invest in Cleveland?
I've been doing it. Yeah. I mean, you just gotta know the areas and stuff, right? I've had good success. I've had one not good deal go through. But I mean, at the end of the day, in any market, you just gotta know what you're getting into.
Like, what's the price point that you're getting into in Cleveland?
Bought an 8-plex for $450.
8-plex. Oh, I think you were telling us about this one. 8-plex for $450. So you're just over you're like 60,000 a unit, something like that.
Yeah, just under actually, about 57K per door. Yeah, and rents going in are like 650, 700. So it exceeds 1% rule. But the rents should probably be for one bedrooms in and around 850 to 900.
Okay, so you're going to be probably like what, 1.3, 1.4% of your acquisition cost with rents.
Yeah.
And once you get things up to market.
Yeah.
And what's Ohio like as far as rent increases? You can just adjust it to whatever you want.
It's beautiful. Yeah. Just whatever you want. Actually, on the leases that we inherited, the previous landlord had put in there, upon a sale, the new landlord could evict with just a 2-month notice. So 60-day notice. So even if they have a lease for like another 8 months, we can just serve notice that you're out in 60 days if we wanted to.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's probably not your goal.
No, we're not looking to vacate the entire building.
Yeah.
We can identify a couple of units, but we do want to turn over the building. It's a BRRRR, and it's a small deal. I'm in much larger deals these days, but it just I look for opportunities. I have some Canadian partners that wanted to do a smaller deal. They don't want to partner into a large deal and kind of have a minute share. They'd rather get into a smaller deal but have a bigger chunk of the pie. And I was like, fine. So I just kept looking for a deal. This one came up. It worked out. And I ran the numbers like on a refi at a 9 cap, it should be around 670.
670 would be your value.
Yeah.
And would appraisers support a 9 cap there? Will lenders?
I mean, we went into it at a 6.5 cap. And, the appraisal came in actually a little higher than what we are actually acquired it at.
And are you close to, they have that big hospital there, right?
Yeah, Cleveland Clinic. Yeah. We're a little bit more in the suburbs. We're like 20 minutes out.
20 minutes. Yeah, and I think that like a lot of investors that target some of those not generally considered great cities like their suburbs, because the suburbs are kind of where people spread to.
Right.
Not necessarily. Is that generally your approach? You go to the suburbs?
I mean, you know what? It kind of reminds me of Hamilton. Hamilton, I started investing like over 10 years ago. I mean, growing up in a GTA, I visited Hamilton probably twice in my life. And at that time, there were some really rough areas. But there were still some pockets which were nice. And like I have a property right off of Locke Street. Even back then, it was a nice area. And even now, it's just really changed.
Yeah.
There's a lot more expansion, that sort of thing. So I would say Cleveland and many cities across the U.S., you just gotta know which pockets to consider and which ones you don't. And one thing in the U.S., the population size they have, there are definitely areas like D areas that we don't really have in Canada.
Yeah, the areas can be a little bit worse.
Yes.
Although I think Hamilton and Brantford have challenged some of those American areas at some points in time.
Right.
Not in general, but you just the thing I've noticed about the U.S. is just you can make a mistake of buying on the wrong side of the street. You can buy 2 streets over, and that's drastically different.
100%.
And that's the thing. Like, we don't see that as much here, where 2 streets makes a big difference.
Yeah, and that's why your boots in the ground really makes a big difference. So if it's a property manager, your realtor, if it's your appraisal and the inspection that go through, I mean, there's a lot of that elements that that help formulate the decision to move forward or not.
Yeah. So you got good boots on the ground there in Cleveland. I mean, that's for people around here, like, crap, you could even go look at your property. What's Cleveland away from here?
Well, 5 hours from here.
5 hours from here?
Yeah, 4.5, 5 hours.
Yeah, I used to do the drive to Youngstown, which would stop before I got to Cleveland and then go south.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've driven to Cleveland plenty of times. I was actually contemplating going this trip.
Yeah, just driving down and check things out. Too bad they don't have a little hoverboat service.
It's directly across from London, right across the Great Lake. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You'd be like 50 kilometers away. Yeah. So, I mean, I love the idea of that. And it's definitely something I would take a look at. I mean, it's just, if you're going to do something like that, for me, it's got to be a big play. It's, I want something where I can grow in that market, or, a clear angle for growth. I like the idea of the price points you're buying. I mean, is that a standard price point?
I have a student of mine just went under contract for 25 units for 1.4.
25 units for 1.4.
Yeah, all 3-bedroom units.
All right, let's break down some numbers here. 1.4.
And just open escrow, so there's potentially some room to bring it down.
So 56. So you're in between 55 and 60,000 a unit there. Is that pretty standard?
Yeah, and those are 3-bedroom units.
Yeah, 3-bedroom units. Oh,
yeah.
Well,
so it's a big building.
And as far as a type of tenant you're getting there compared to, say, if you were to do the same thing in Hamilton, how does it compare?
Yeah, I mean, number one, the price point, the affordability, the average rents for a 3-bedroom, probably like $1,100-1,200 max.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is because you can go buy a single family home for $120,000.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's one thing you have to be really understanding your market. What the rent limits you can charge these people. For a 1-bedroom, you probably be $600-$800. For a 2-bedroom, you're probably be $900 to $1,000, and then for a 3-bedroom, probably $1,200. You're pushing your limit because once you're at that point, people are gonna want to say, well, I'll just go and buy a house or go rent out a single family house.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, I had my very first property in Cleveland. I purchased a single family 3-2 for $80,000 and I rented for $1,000 a month.
Okay.
So that 3-bedroom detached home for $1,000 a month.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't sound that insane, but I guess if you compare that to now, like a few years back in Ontario, you could find some examples of that, but not
potentially. Yeah,
not anytime recently.
Maybe Windsor. I remember back in the day looking at Windsor, like 2016, 17.
Yeah, you might have found that.
You might have found like sub $100,000 single family homes, but now it's like they're like 5 times higher.
Yeah. So what kind of cash flow? So say the 8-plex. What kind of cash flow do you think could be at? Like, will you complete a perfect BRRRR?
Based on my calculations, if we don't go over budget on the renos, that sort of thing, and we hit the metrics, and we're conservative at a 9 cap, which most likely it'll praise maybe in the 7.5.
Oh wow.
8. But at a 9 cap, we should be able to borrow out our capital. In terms of rent, so what we did was we went in with a bridge loan, so higher rate, 1-year bridge. Just to go in there.
So basically it's private money, or is it institutional?
No, I mean, it's institutional, but it's a bridge.
Okay.
And it's a firm out of California, actually.
All right.
And they do this type of financing because I could have locked it in at an 8 rate for 30 years.
Yeah.
But then there's prepayment penalties over the first 5 years.
Yeah,
so our goal is to kind of BRRRR this thing. So we went in with the bridge.
So you want to take that 1-year term.
Correct.
Yeah. That's sort of what they refer to a 1-year mortgage as kind of a bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And then at that point, if we refi to 8.5%, we should be able to pull out all our equity.
Well, with the recent developments, maybe you won't be at 8.5%.
Right. I mean, between now and the next 11 months, we'll see what happens. It's wild just to kind of see in the last week with these 3 beautiful banks.
Yeah, it started on Friday, so I mean, this is going to come out a few weeks later. So,
right.
But yeah, all of a sudden we went from we didn't have an increase to thinking we might have more increases later in the year or might just stay steady. And now a lot of people are pricing in rate decreases. I don't know if that's going to happen. But one thing they don't have direct control over is the bond rates, the bond yields. So if those bond yields stay down because of a perceived banking crisis, then that means fixed rates hypothetically should come on down.
Right.
Maybe that deal just got more profitable. I don't know.
Yeah, possibly. And that's why you have to always run your numbers conservatively. Yeah. And at the end of the day, even with my partners and stuff, I'm like, we're going to aim for a perfect BRRRR, but anticipate we don't. Are we okay with that?
But 8.5, like who are you going to for an 8.5? Is that the California firm still?
No. So a broker basically shopped it, and we've got a few people in the pipeline. Mm-hmm. We got a couple quotes.
These are basically private lenders. Yeah. They'll do a 30-year.
Yes.
30-year amortized fixed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the one thing about the U.S., you're familiar with it. I mean, it's game on when it comes to financing.
There's so many of them.
There's so many.
Like to get something in the like under 10, in that 7, 8, 9, 10 range. There's so many lenders that'll do that, even for Canadian. Like, I don't think they'd look too differently at me if I showed experience in the U.S. Okay, you got an LP or you got an LLC. Okay,
yes,
we'll secure it. You'll personally guarantee it. So it is recourse or is non-recourse?
This is a recourse. Usually, non-recourse happens over $1 million. It's a little larger assets.
Yeah. So once you get into the larger, over $1 million, and then you can go with like a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, like an agency loan, right?
Agency, exactly. Yep.
Yeah. And then I've had broker conversations where the guy told me that they'll basically treat you just like a Canadian would be treated just like an American in that regard.
Yeah,
they don't
at that
care.
point.
At that point, they're just looking at the building.
Yeah, but they definitely want to see a track record.
They want to see
try to
somebody
go in your
who knows
first deal into that. It's gonna be difficult.
Yeah. Or you bring somebody in as a sponsor,
U.S. partner. Or something.
U.S.
KP
partner
or something. Yep.
Yeah, that's something. There's certain lingo that as I do more business in the US, I see it's very distinctly different than the lingo we use here.
Yes.
But a lot of it means similar stuff. Yeah.
Right.
And when you break it all down, it's a very similar process
100%.
that they use down there.
Yep.
So it sounds like Cleveland's a good bet.
I mean, there's Cincinnati. I mean, Ohio's a state. There are other markets, not just Cleveland.
I feel like Cincinnati has a better
Columbus.
reputation as a city. Doesn't make it that much better. I've driven through. But do you like that town? Do you invest in the actual core? Do you invest in the suburbs?
Again, for me, I look at the opportunity.
Yeah, so wherever the opportunity
sometimes it's wherever the opportunity comes about. Sometimes you negotiate some great terms.
Yeah.
And also, if I have got some decent boots in the ground, some resources to help me.
Yeah.
I mean, that can help dictate. So I'm in a deal right now in Tucson, Arizona. And this will be my first project. But, we went into this because the opportunity presented itself to us through our network. And you're like, wow, let's take a closer look. And we ended up buying this piece of land, 32 acres, right by the airport. This is going back about 3 years ago for about $2 million.
Is this the one that's like a five-phase development?
3-phase, yes.
3-phase? Okay.
Yeah, 3-phase development. So again, like it wasn't on my initial radar. I was actually looking more in Phoenix. And I got to Phoenix twice right around that when COVID hit. And I was looking at opportunities, making offers, but then boom, this opportunity came up and we're like, all right, let's kind of shift our focus.
Is this your first crack at larger development?
No, because in California, my father was a builder. So I've been involved, basically I worked with him for about 5 years when I initially moved to California. So it really got exposed.
So real estate's in the family then?
Yes. So that's another thing. Strategic partnerships and leveraging the people or connections you have. You don't have to do everything. That's the beauty about doing larger and larger deals.
Oh, I'm all for it. I think large is potentially good for not the now money, but maybe the long-term money, the large stuff. Like you just get that stuff in the pipeline and just keep on moving through what you're doing for the short-term stuff too.
It takes time.
Yeah.
It's taken us almost 3 years to develop it.
So you're just in the soft process, haven't broken ground, and it's been.
We haven't broken ground, so we're looking to break ground going into Q2 of this year. We're just kind of finalizing a few things and just raising the last bit of capital. But we own the land free and clear. We've done the entitlement on the first phase. We've raised the land value considerably, probably maybe more than 3 times.
That's interesting. You got entitlement on the first phase, but not the second?
Yeah, mainly because we didn't have to go through a zoning change.
Oh, so part of it needed to be rezoned, but not all of it?
Yeah, the second phase where we're planning to potentially build another 600 units, that needs to go through a zoning change.
And have you spoken with the municipality and did they seem agreeable to it?
They seem agreeable to it. They understand. I mean, the first phase being residential, gated community, all the amenities. We have a third component, which is the commercial and plaza center. So this back area, which was, I believe, is zoned more of an industrial warehouse, it just doesn't make sense anymore. So again, that's what we're proposing and pushing for. So it may take another couple of years, which would be fine because.
But your project doesn't rely on that one getting approved.
No,
like you don't need that. But that's gravy if it happens.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Like we've got significant lift on the valuation just on this first phase. So if we just stop in the first phase, it's still worth it.
It's still a great deal.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about how you would structure a deal like that. Like what's the total value of, say, phase 1, the one that you're sort of guaranteed you've got an approval for, you've got entitlement?
So phase 1 of this Tucson deal is 216 units.
216 units.
So based on our valuation at a 5 cap for a brand new build, we're anticipating completion in about 2 years. The valuation is around $60 million.
60. Okay. And what's your all in to get you there?
We're looking at just over 40 million.
40 million. So potentially 20 million left in this deal.
Correct. So that's what we're anticipating, be able to refinance the capital out and be able to pay off the initial debt.
Yeah. How much did you have to raise from, do you have equity investors on this?
So currently we don't. There's just 3 of us, and we own the land free and clear.
Okay.
Which we paid about $2 million for. Now we've put in all the resources, engineering to do the
So you've paid everything out of pocket so far.
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds expensive.
Yeah, I mean we're probably in it for about 300 grand or
Yeah.
so. So now we're at a position where we're very close to pulling permits, and we're saying, all right, the construction loan is around 32 million or so.
Mm-hmm.
So the bank's gonna want some liquidity. And
We're going to need to see you come in with the difference.
Yeah, we're putting the land free and clear, so that's basically our down payment. But they still want some liquidity, like reserves.
Yeah.
And what we're understanding is about 10%. So we're going to probably see about $3 million.
Okay.
So right now, because we're spread in about 3-4 other projects, we're looking to raise some money to bring in some of that liquidity that the bank requires. Yeah. So that's why right now I'm speaking to a couple investors, and they're just kind of running through it. And hopefully in the next month and a half, really May is when we really want to be able to have everything dialed in.
So you still got to raise $3 million, basically.
$2 million.
$2 million?
Yeah.
$2 million. And when you do that, are you looking at that as like you're going to borrow that as debt, or will you?
No,
I'll
offer equity.
Piece? Yeah.
So what I'm looking at is a strategic partner.
So you want somebody who can guarantee the loan too, then?
That's not necessarily the requirement, but strategic meaning we could potentially do more and more business together.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Instead of just raising the money through like 10 random investors, putting like 150 grand each or something, more like a group or individual who it's like, I mean, this is they're interested, because we especially with a second phase, and that's kind of like an enticing element for them to consider. And then we've got other projects, even in California, that are coming up. We've got under contract and so forth. We want to be developing. Our goal is to build 10,000 units over the next 10 years. Build new and keep. Build new and keep. And we create this model where it's a simplified design, slab on grade, 2 to 3 stories, nothing complex, no elevators, no underground parking. In and around California, in our market, we do like Arizona, and we may consider some other markets, but right now those are 2 markets we really want to target. And so again, that strategic partner would help to kind of fast track things.
Yeah, I mean, and I think about that too, and I think a lot of investors, maybe I'm wrong to say that, but I think that way too. Like, I'd love just, if I'm going to bring somebody in as a partner, I want to do a lot of deals with them. Right. I don't want to do just one.
Yeah.
And if you raise from smaller investors, don't get me wrong, that could be great. But I think you bust the top right off of your growth potential when you have somebody with deep pockets and limited time or experience in this field, and they want somebody that they can trust, that they can work with.
100%. Yeah. I mean, listen, I've done several JVs with people who've got like 100 grand or something, right? It's great to work with them and see that they're excited and they're participating. They're in a deal that they never thought they could be in some. But knowing the next one, most likely not going to be participating, right? So then you're like, all right, then I have to go look for the next person.
Yeah,
the
and
next
then you keep cycling them in.
Right.
Some of them might carry over.
They'll carry over, but then in between, I mean, you want to do other deals, you're going to have to look for new money.
They might. So yeah, that's definitely something to consider. But you brought up something that I wanted to touch on. You said your total soft costs are somewhere around 300 grand getting through that process. It wouldn't have been that much different if you were only building 50 units. It probably still would have been 300, right? So this is where you get some economies of scale going into the bigger builds. And for your time, like the process, you're still going through the site plan process one time. Like you're going through the entire entitlement process once. So why not do it for a big deal?
Yeah.
And, 100%. Just think bigger, right? I think a lot of people who've come on this show, like there are exceptions, don't get me wrong. There's some big thinkers such as yourself. And then there are others who are putting in the same amount of work and not getting as much. And I think the lesson that we can take from today is think bigger.
Yeah, absolutely. It's constantly pushing ourselves past what we think we are capable of, outside of our comfort zone, constantly exploring that, because you're right. We get comfortable doing like eightplex and the next eightplex and then duplex and then fiveplex and then, you did 20plex. Okay, great. Yeah. But then what about 200? Whoa, that's for somebody else, right? Type of thing, right? But why not explore it? And maybe it's partner up the right individuals, and then kind of get your feet wet and say, okay, you know what? The time, the trade-off. I've seen it on my first few deals with like a single family or duplex, the amount of time, energy it takes to close a deal, financing, all that good stuff. It's virtually similar to like 8 units, virtually similar to like a 20 unit type of thing, right?
Yeah.
So, once you take the next step, yes, there's potentially more work involved, but if you're bringing in other people, your own personal time and effort may not differ that much. And you're right. In terms of like your overall portfolio and game plan, maybe you have a couple of these longer term, bigger projects, where you've got, you're leveraging other people, either your resources, your partners, or third party, vendors or that sort of thing.
Yeah, you want to have a picture of it, like how you're going to do all that. One of the things I thought was cool from the mastermind is Glenn talking about you want to have now money, medium-term money, and long-term money.
Yes.
And for me, I think I was a long time, I was the guy that didn't worry too much about the now money. I'm like, I just want to put some stuff that's like long-term gain. And it really comes down to the proper strategy that includes all of it.
Yes.
And yeah, that's a really cool project. Tell me about the partners, like your key 3 partners there that you're one of them, and then you have 2 others.
So my father-in-law.
Okay, so he's on it.
Yeah, he's on it. And it was interesting because we got into this deal through his family. So extended family, they actually owned this piece of land for like over 10 years. And they were in some kind of dispute. And then all of a sudden he came along to kind of see if he can help. And he ended up saying, well, maybe it's best I just buy it off of you guys. And that's what he ended up doing. So it's just him and one other individual, someone else that he's partnered with for many years on other deals. Okay. So, we're in this deal right now, and we're looking to bring in, again, someone in for the raise right now is potentially 20% equity. We're looking to sell. Okay. But it could be sizable. I give this example of someone, a 20% stake for $2 million
it's $4 million.
For a deal of this size. Yeah. I mean, it's massive. In comparison, you raise $2 million usually for like a $5-6 million asset. So potentially the same amount of raise for a deal like 5-6 times larger.
So would you be giving? So if they invested $2 million, they get the $2 million back at the end, and then retain the 20%
all the way through for this first phase.
Yeah. I mean, sounds really cool.
Yeah.
I'd be into it.
Let me know.
Just got to find that $2 million. That's so funny. Like right now we're kind of, in the raise mode because I'm doing the stuff in Florida, which I'm taking on money for. And then we have the campground up north, and then just another property that's just too complimentary for us not to buy or not to at least try to buy came up. Wasn't even on the radar, but we got an offer in on it. So
you know how it is. You're in real estate full time, opportunities come up, and then your capital spread in so many different deals type of thing. That's what we're finding ourselves.
Oh yeah,
in, right?
I don't like that broke feeling. Like it's just like it's everywhere. It's all out. Like there's wealth there, but it's not in my pocket.
Right. And they're planting seeds. Ultimately. And some turn quicker than other ones. Other ones take a lot longer. We have one project where it's gone through the city multiple times, And even when they've given us the support and they say we're going to go for it, then they kind of come back with some other change, that sort of thing.
Where is that?
In California.
That's in California somewhere?
We found there's a huge difference between California and Arizona for a lot of that kind of red tape, the challenges we're facing.
And I like to keep an ear for that kind of thing, because generally what I hear from most people is, once you go through, like here in Canada, you go through that pre-consultation process where you ask, what would it take if I wanted to build this? And then they tell you everything that they would expect.
Right.
A lot of the feedback I get from people is that it's pretty consistent what they ultimately require with what they said they were going to require.
Yeah.
I have an exception to that, though. I remember when I was trying to build a duplex, tear down a house and build a duplex, and I had to go through site plan. So I don't recommend doing that for just a duplex. It's a pain. But they gave me their list, and then when we were almost at site plan approval, I was checking in. I'm like, hey, are we there yet? Are we going to have site plan approval? Like, it should be next week. And then they came back at me. They're like, we want you to make this blend in with the neighborhood more. So we want you to change your whole design and give it a veranda and all this. I'm like, I can't do that. I don't have space for that. And it then blew up. The whole deal blew up. But so there can be those little wrenches thrown in.
Absolutely. And what we also found in California, city by city, it's different.
Yeah.
So we've got projects in probably 5-6 different cities, and each one operates completely different. Some are very very, not honestly easygoing, but as you mentioned, what they say is what's going to happen, and you can kind of be a bit more predictable. Other ones, they tell you one thing, and then it constantly changes or do this change, and then it's like 1 year goes by, 2 years go by, so now you're losing a lot of time.
And that's so expensive a lot of time, especially if you're borrowing money. You don't want to get into that. Yeah. And this is why I think it's so critical to like kind of look around. Where are you trying to develop? Like one of my coaching students, he was developing in Windsor, and he's asking me about it. I'm like, well, you're gonna want to speak with the city. Here are some angles. He's like, well, I think I can do this. And it required a spot zoning change, which I would never have tried that. But he's like, I see another guy who just did it around the corner. Well, that's something, right? If they're
Right.
allowing some other guy to do it, they'll probably let you do
the
it.
precedents. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas other cities are like, we'll never do a spot rezone. Like, we're not just going to rezone that lot. We'll rezone the neighborhood,
Right.
but that's a much bigger process.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Also, in terms of land development, I think one bit of advice is like you be very careful if you're leveraging or financing land. Because there's that unpredictability of when you actually get things approved.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can go in and own the land free and clear, it just allows you that flexibility and, not that, just to service the debt on something like that, it can really hang you type of thing.
Oh yeah. I mean, it takes a certain type of personality to even think about that. Like if you're going to leverage the land, like you've got to have cash flow coming in other places.
Yes.
You got to be willing, right? Like ask yourself that question. Am I willing to sit on this and pay for it for 5 to 10 years if it comes down to that?
Exactly.
And if the answer is no, then, maybe reconsider or look at a different way of doing it or bring in an equity partner, somebody that is willing.
Yeah.
The more like people I interview and time I've been in this space is everything comes down to how. Like, how are you going to do it? It's not a if you can or if you can't. And odds are, even with these municipalities, when they push back, it's not like they're saying no.
Right.
They're just telling you, here's how we'd need to see that done.
Right.
You just don't want to go into it and where
it doesn't pencil out profit wise to even do that.
Yeah.
And that's when you have to still say.
All of a sudden they say, oh yeah, just do this thing and it costs $400,000 and it kills your profit or whatever. Like, okay, well, we won't do that.
Yeah. Or we want homes only 1,300 square feet on 1 acres. It's like, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
With 10 houses here when it should be like 100.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So it just comes down to pushing your business downhill, right? You don't want to push your business uphill. Right. Like if you pick a battle with the city that has notorious for giving people a hard time, why do that?
Yeah.
Why not go to the place where it's just easy to do it?
Yep.
So would you say that your business is more development or more like rental portfolio building?
I would say it's a good balance. I would say 50-50.
50-50.
Yeah. I mean, again, the development stuff is longer play. Stuff that we started like 3 years ago. So a lot of times you're just waiting. You've outsourced it to an engineering firm, and then you're waiting for the city to get feedback. So
it's still relatively new then for you.
Yes.
Because these take a while to play out, right?
Yeah. So in the meantime, I'm doing like active, BRRRRs or repositioning some of the assets already owned, partnering and so forth. And
where are like the partners that you're finding, where are they coming from?
Both U.S. and Canada.
Yeah.
I think over the last year, significant, more than ever in the past 10 years since I've been in the States, I've seen the interest level for Canadians to invest in the U.S. has just gotten, you've probably seen it.
Oh, yeah.
Tremendously high.
It's super high. And I think, ever since the first lockdowns and people realized what Canada's all about, it really gave some people some motivation to not be here.
Yeah. A lot of people are moving too. It's not just about investing. It's about moving too.
Yeah. I mean, I saw Rob Brake, who's been on this show, like immediately like pick up, and I have not talked to him since he did this, but he's been in Costa Rica like full time for like 3 years.
There you go.
Like the lockdown started and he was out. And I'm pretty sure he's still a realtor in like Durham area, just operating remote, which is he's challenging you for distance.
Yeah.
But you're not a practicing realtor here though, are you?
No, I'm not.
Because you need to be a resident.
Right. Yeah. But I'm saying more and more the world can be, you can create systems and processes and utilize, different people to work more and more virtual, or remote.
Yeah.
And that's what I discovered. Even being out here now, I'm doing transactions in California and I haven't been there in 3 weeks type of thing, right?
Yeah, you can do things remote. I mean, it all comes down to your comfort level, your experience level, to know that you can handle things when they happen, and know that your instinct is not going to be to run over to the property, which, I mean, when does that ever really help anything?
Minimum.
Very, very, very rare. Yeah, and it's something, over time you figure out, right? Like for me, I noticed that progression is just like I very slowly got more and more irritated to go to site. If it was building something or whatever, I just started to realize, hey, I really don't enjoy doing that. I'm going to just delegate that, or I'm going to hire somebody that can do that. And then I just phased myself out and didn't need to do that anymore.
Beautiful. And I think that's important. Identifying what part of the process you like or you enjoy. The more you figure that part out, then the more you're able to do this for longer term. So if you enjoy people or raising capital, or networking, bringing in partners or sourcing a deal, focus on that.
I do actually like going to sites. I just don't like going there because somebody's asking me for something. I like to just go there and I'm like, I want to look at it all, solve a problem that no one asked me to solve. Engineering, I love like figuring out how we're going to retrofit this house and make this all work at a conceptual level, and then talk to the engineers and say, hey, what if we did this? And they're like, hey, yeah, that'll work. I'm like, okay, good. I didn't get the degree for it, but at least I can help.
No, absolutely. And that's a lot of times, even my father-in-law will leverage a lot of his experience. It's like, all right, let's design this thing preliminary before we hand it off to an engineer, because a lot of times they may over-engineer it.
Oh yeah, over-engineering, calling for materials that are just a huge waste of money. Yes. Like I see that kind of thing all the time. And look over your drawings, and that's why I tell people, like, try and work with an investor-focused designer if you're doing stuff, because hopefully they get that OSB is cheaper than plywood. That's just one example. Like whatever you put on there, when you send that to the hardware store, they give you exactly what was spec'd. They won't substitute. So.
I've never tried this, but what about bringing on a partner who's an engineer, like potentially giving him some equity, incentivizing them to make this as good as possible, as cheap as possible. You know what I'm saying? Like,
engineers don't always know cheap though. Like unless they're investors themselves, right? They figured out a way to make it cheaper and stuff. We're actually looking at potentially bringing on a partner that's handy and like good with trailer acquisition and repair and like renovation, because that's kind of a bit of a weakness for our campground. I wouldn't mind giving up a little bit of equity to somebody who could just stock our camp with really like workable, nice trailers.
Right.
Yeah, because it's you can buy the brand new ones, but they're so expensive, and we don't really want that. We want unique.
Right. And if you just hire people, you're just going to overcharge.
Yeah, they might overbill or not deliver on time. But if you bring somebody in as equity and you can get along with them, like now all of a sudden they have a vested interest to make it work. Yeah, and that's it's something to think about. Like I generally been the guy that didn't want to give up equity, but now I'm more like, and I have said this many times, like strategically I would happily give up equity to the right people.
I'm game for that because I don't look at it as one deal. I mean, there's gonna be other deals.
Yeah, like let's grow big.
Yeah.
And I think that more and more now, like let's go country club money, like go to the people that got the Ferraris and stuff.
Yeah.
Do you do that? Like, is that one of your sources of finding investors, like going to
events and networking? Like we just had a 2-day boot camp here in Hamilton, and there were some investors there,
Yeah.
And I had someone just tell me, hey, this was totally worth it for me to come here. Even though I'm already a member, I already know this stuff, but I just sat down beside a guy telling me about a project I'm doing. He's going to put in $100,000 on my next deal. So it was like, this trip cost me $5,000. This was all worth it. Yeah. Right. And that's what I tend to find happening. All these relationships, you go there, either, during the day, you're all kind of like, learning and stuff, but then there's break free. There's a networking opportunity. In the evening, everyone goes out for dinner. And that's where really kind of you get to know people even better.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, so critical with those events, like the people you meet there, because the price of admission is a filter for the room. It filters out those who are not that serious. I'm not saying some of the people who are serious don't come, but of course, like you get a lot of serious people in those rooms. Yeah. And then from there, investors, what have you. For me, I've been thinking, like there's a car club here in town. They got a bunch of like McLarens and Ferraris. I'm like, there's probably some people worth knowing in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Joining that car club might not be a bad idea. I know I spoke with Mark Loeffler about one of his partners. He met him through his membership at the Golf and Country Club in Hamilton.
There you go.
So a tournament. And, that's like a multi-million-dollar investor, like somebody who's put in millions to deals. Like,
I mean, you go where the people are.
Yes. Like I think there's a certain portion of that. You're going where the people are. I mean, obviously events is one, but I think some of the best potential investors are your professionals that don't have that much time available to them. Like they want to generate a nice return, and I'm sure they wouldn't even mind bragging about it at their country club, but they just don't really have the time to go out and learn how to BRRRR or to learn how to develop, like your doctors, your lawyers, your professionals, various different people in white collar jobs.
Yes.
And the question is, how do you reach those people?
Yeah, you got to find those environments. I mean, it comes down to, in anything in life, if you want something, where are those people? Like even just talk outside of real estate, you want to find a quality person to marry. Well, where are they going to be? Most likely not the bars and
not
stuff,
in the
right?
bar.
So you got to think outside the box. Where would they be? Would they be at the library? Would they be at church? Would they be at, certain, art galleries? I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
If I was single, I'd probably be going to church to meet with someone these days.
I mean, honestly, that's where I found my wife.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was in my early 30s and boom, through someone contact, met her and away we go. Now I'm in California,
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, you did the immigration the easy way, as you said it.
It really is the easy way. Yeah, that's a whole other kind of realm with the visas and trying to move to the U.S. I mean, there's a process, but the easiest way is marrying an American.
Yeah. That's not advice. Yeah, I think you might upset some government officials if you if you put that out there. But yeah, of course it is easy. I mean, everything I've done, I don't have any sort of visa in the U.S. at the moment. I did start that process and then just put it on pause. You don't actually need it.
No, only if you're planning to actually move there. That's really the reason. I mean, that's the only real reason you would want to go through that process.
Yeah, like if you want to be there for more than 6 months at a time, that's the big thing, right? Otherwise, you got to check out and come back in, and they may not let you back in.
Right.
Whereas if you got the visa, then you just keep rolling in or stay in.
Yeah, you definitely have to be careful crossing the borders. You know, if they're going to be tracking you and seeing you going back and forth multiple times, they're going to start raising flags. Like, what do you do? What's your business here?
Like,
and if you're like, well, I'm going to check on properties, now it becomes more of an active business. Yeah. Then you're really going to need some sort of work visa.
Yeah. Like for me, like I want to be down there in the winters, but I don't need a visa for that. And I can look over on stuff. Like that's very normal. Last few years we've been down, you know, up to 3.5 months. Yeah. As little as like 4 weeks. So yeah, I think like that kind of thing works for a lot of Canadians. I think still having the visa is probably something they'll still probably eventually get moving again. Like it's not a bad thing to have, because then that one day you could just switch your residency. You can still come to Canada. Absolutely. And then it just flips. Now you won't be in Canada for more than 6 months, which, I mean, what do we got? We got June, July, August, and September. That's pretty much good after that.
The weather. I mean, it says something where if you can live somewhere where you have very predictable weather and it's relatively warm, I mean, it does help.
You got a bit of a tan, like.
Yeah, but I mean, this actual season has been significantly wet. Like we've got more rain in California, which is actually a good thing because it's been in a drought for like almost 10 years. Yeah. So it's been good, but weather-wise, I mean, I haven't gone to the beach probably in 5 months because of that. It's been raining consistently.
But generally speaking, a much more enjoyable climate.
I mean, always outdoors, either, you know, going hiking. There's a lot of trails, you know, going to the beach or in the mountains. I mean, you have it all in California. That's the beauty about it.
Yeah, I think, you know, I need to get like a snowmobile or something to, because there's obviously a way to make living up here better. Like we got a pretty nice like property, beautiful view. It's just, you know, snow. Like with my son, for instance, we want to just get him outside. Right. And you know, when you have to like get a snowsuit on and stuff, it's a little bit of a deterrent. Like if we're being honest. Right. Yeah. So that's obviously the trick here. But I think a lot of what we do here on this show is talking about lifestyle design, and real estate is not the end. It's a means to an end. Right. And it's a tool to get you where you want to go. So I think a lot of people want that flexibility to be able to spend time down south during the winter. This is a tool to do that. And
absolutely. And you made a good point. Like it's something that allows flexibility. Because a lot of times, like, I mean, most people haven't dialed in every single thing that they want, you know, how they want their lives to be, but real estate allows that flexibility to figure that out. You know, and it may change, you know, like whatever you want today may change tomorrow type of thing. But with real estate, you know, whether I'm being a realtor or investor working on BRRRRs or development, I mean, I don't have to necessarily be fixed in one place for a long period of time. So I'm here in Canada, but I could still do my realtor business back in California. Or I go to California, I could still purchase and acquire property in Canada and utilize, you know, contractors and whatnot.
I don't know. I don't know any Americans buying Canadian property. I'm sure it happens. Actually, I guess.
I mean, now with the stoppage with Trudeau, kind of not allowing foreign investors to come the next 2 years, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's going to make less
more difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Brock Rogerson's still probably doing some stuff. Do you know Brock?
I don't.
Yeah, he's living in California as well. Similar scenario.
Okay.
Actually, I think he's not in California right now. He was, but he'll be going back down. Yeah, but very similar story. You know, was Canadian. I think he still is technically Canadian, not American yet. Married an American. Moved down there.
There you go.
Moved down there, but still has a big portfolio in Canada.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, that's not really the path that we see. We see far more Canadians going south. But
but there's something to say going the opposite way.
Well, I like that you know how to invest here, you have the teams here, and if you see a deal here and it makes sense, you go where the opportunity is,
right?
And you have a team that really opens that opportunity up for you,
right? And then for investors. So now that I'm part of Wealth Genius and we're expanding and bring on, I'm starting to get radars of some U.S. investors, and just had a couple individuals who've got a portfolio of about 1,800 units see the value. They're like, oh wow, there's a bunch of Canadians who are real estate investors interested in investing in the U.S. Maybe we'll join and potentially raise capital through it. But now it may open up, it may spark them to see potential opportunity in Canada. Because with the dollar exchange, the U.S. dollar was a lot further in Canada.
Oh yeah.
So if there's an opportunity in Canada, they may explore it now.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, it's just diversifying. Yeah, I got a little up there.
Yep.
A little down here, and it kind of works. So Wealth Genius, that's your education.
Yes.
I think Alfonso founded that. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's been on the show, Alfonso Quadra, maybe about 20, 30 episodes back.
Nice.
Okay, so you guys are both sort of doing the real estate education circuit together.
Correct. So basically partnered with him about a year ago. And since that time, their group's gone from about 120 members to over 600 members. Across Canada. Cool. Now we're bringing on U.S. members. So it's really been great. It's an educational platform, also networking, and you're just seeing the growth and just seeing the interaction between members, partnerships happening, people raising capital through the group. It's amazing.
It's gonna be a good room to be in. Like any room that, there's a filter with the price to enter. I think those are rooms that are naturally nice to be in for an investor. Serious people. Yeah. Absolutely. Thomas, anything else you wanted to share? Bits of wisdom, a story I didn't ask you about? You tell me.
No, I mean, again, I've transitioned now. I'm in the U.S., mainly focused in the U.S. I'm all about helping people understand that process, because there are, I would say, a good 80 to 90% is very similar to Canada, but there are some elements that you need to be aware of. And there are some differences between a Canadian wanting to invest in the U.S. So, I mean, I'm all about sharing that either through social media or some formalized coaching and stuff. But it's just a pleasure to see more Canadians now wanting to come to the U.S. and be able to just kind of see, the steps and the portfolios they're creating. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, in terms of like reaching out to me, social media, Instagram is probably the easiest way. Okay. My handle is Real Thomas Laurini. But it's a pleasure to be here again, Andrew. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. Glad we could do it face to face. We'd never actually met until you spoke at the mastermind. Yes. We did the digital virtual. Yeah. But yeah, it's great to finally connect, and we'll stay in touch and probably have you back to speak when we do another one of these masterminds if it can work for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Thomas.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people out there talking about the infinite banking strategy and whether or not it makes sense for them. To find out what it's all about and if it's a fit for you, visit controlandcompound.com/Andrew Hines, where my audience can gain exclusive access to books, podcasts, and webinars tailor-made for real estate investors. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Please make sure to share this episode far and wide. Help it help more people. I really appreciate you tuning in. I'll see you on the next one.